It's all you, brother. Go for it.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. I was told not to do this, but I'm just going to do this anyway. But I've got a few dad jokes. I'm just going to give one. And that's how do you get a squirrel to like you? You act like a nut.
Join the meeting.
So I'm glad I could hear a couple people laugh. Everyone's muted. So it's not really a tough crowd here, I see. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and start here. Let me see if I can share my screen. Okay. Benson, do you see everything? Are we good? Okay. Thank you. Okay. So good morning, everyone.
Join the meeting.
First off, I want to thank you for spending your Saturday with me to hear and learn a little bit about youth protection. As you can see, commitment is definitely key. It's our commitment here to this youth protection program that'll, help us with our policies and ensuring that we've got a good youth protection program, and it really all starts with you. There's a lot of processes involved in youth protection. Sometimes complacency takes over, but if we stay committed, we will all succeed. So it'll definitely be one less thing for us to worry about. So remember, commitment is key, for us to all be successful. Our agenda today, like Benson mentioned, we will go through, some items. I don't want to beat you folks all to death here with a lot of information. This is pertinent information, gives you folks a good overview of what our program is. But we'll start with an introduction of myself. Rotary, we'll talk about Rotary International a little bit, awareness and prevention, leadership, position, responsibilities. We'll talk about the youth protection procedures, get you folks acclimated with some of the things that we do here for youth protection. We'll talk about some best practices and some key takeaways, and some questions if you folks have any. So my name is Peter Evans. I'm with the Eco Rotary of Kaka'ako. I am your youth protection officer for this Rotary year, District 5000. I've chaired youth services for Rotary Club of Honolulu in the past. I was the youth protection officer for prior District Governor Nalani Flynn during her tenure as District Governor. I've got a bachelor's in business administration or business management, currently busy, very busy, working on a master's in engineering. So I've got 25 years of risk management experience in general liability and occupational safety and senior management. Currently work for the DoD at our installation base directorate over there at K-Bay for our beloved Marine Corps. I've got two beautiful daughters, Sasha Tiara, one of which has just became a Rotarian, and I've got my beautiful bride of over 25 years, Camille. So, I share this with you because I'm like most of you. I got a family, job, some experience along the way. With that said, my experience for youth protection comes from myself being resourceful. It comprises of manuals, lifelong experiences, collaborating with my friends in agencies like HPD. But folks, this really isn't rocket science. It's all about ethics. It's about doing right all the time. So I mentioned earlier, commitment is key. So for us in youth protection to be a success, each one of us has to be committed to the program, and know that it is part of the youth services program itself. But by you being here today, it tells me and your peers that you are all committed. So kudos to all of you, and let's get started. So the things we do, youth services brings many opportunities to help shape our youth within our communities. You take a look at these pictures here. These are pictures, just I own these pictures. They're pictures of my experiences, and believe it or not, this encompasses about just a 4 months, 4 to 6 month span of activities that we've done. Um, you know, you can take a look at me here painting pinkies for our Purple Pinky project. Yes, I paint pinkies, and we have a very robust we robust programs. Here we've done literacy. Reading to some children over at Mayor Wright Housing. We've done many things. Now, when you think of youth, let me go back. Oh man. Uh, sorry, folks. I was getting a little antsy with my cursor here.
No
But
worries.
when you take a look at, when you think of youth programs, you think of children. But when you take a look at right over here, we've got Rotaract. We've got the HP James Pearson, the good work that he's doing with Rotaract, and we did IHS. We fed the homeless. And now, mind you, this is all prior to COVID. Uh, things are a little different nowadays. But nonetheless, there's a lot of good things that we do in the youth services programs. Okay, so let's go to our first agenda topic, which is the Rotary International. Rotary International puts out an excellent youth protection guide. This guide gives us it's guidance for dealing with our youth and the expectations that we as leaders have in our youth programs. So this is the foundation and serves as a resource that contains appendices for templates that we can all use and tailor to our clubs. The Rotary International Youth Protection District Youth Protection Guides are the governing guides to our youth protection program. I would recommend that this should be printed and kept with the youth protection guide. Guide should be portable. When I mentioned earlier that I've, a lot of my experience came from being resourceful, this is part of it. I've learned a lot just going through the youth protection guides, the codes of conducts, everything that the policies and procedures for Rotary International, as well as district and club. So those are your best resources. They've been vetted through, they've been thought through. You might have your little parts of your areas that might need a little, a little adding to the guide, but nevertheless, the guts of the guide, the foundation should all be there. The district governor, district youth protection officer, and all club and district leaders involved in Rotaract, Internac, RILA, Rotary Youth Exchange should be very versed in this. Now, I'm not asking that you folks memorize from front to back, but at least know or have handy in case you have any questions. And with that Rotary Youth Protection Guide comes your youth protection officer, and I'm here to help you along the way as well. So awareness and prevention. Our Rotary International Statement of Conduct for Working with Youth, and I'm going to read this to you folks. Rotary International strives to create and maintain a safe environment for all youth who participate in Rotary activities. To the best of their ability, Rotarians, Rotarian spouses, and partners, and other volunteers must safeguard the children and young people with whom they come in contact to protect them from physical, sexual, and psychological abuse. So really, that's all encompassing of what we do and what our program is all about. And bottom line is, we're here to protect our youth, not just protect our youth, but protect our Rotary Club, protect our brand, protect our reputation, protect each other. And that's really what it is. Abuse and harassment of young people can go unaddressed when adults fail to recognize them. Youth protection depends on awareness. of the possibility of abuse and harassment and vigilance in guarding against it. So just being aware of differences, knowing your people, that's really what it comes down to. Um, recognizing abuse. Let me see if I can move this. Sorry. Recognizing abuse and harassment, being aware of the signs of abuse and harassment, be observant when a youth is known to be cheery and suddenly becomes detached. That may be a sign of a problem. But I want to also bring this up, and it really makes sense. We're not psychologists out here. We're not psychiatric experts or social workers out here. We are people, volunteers that are out here doing the right thing. We don't want to overanalyze, but what we want to do is be aware. Sometimes we want to use common sense. The people that we work with or work around, we know them better than anyone else. So when you see something that's a little different, detached, just be aware of those behaviors. In the case of youth exchange, you might see changes of behavior, but that might just be due to homesickness, cultural adjustments, etc. Um, one thing that I want to mention is when I say be aware of the signs of abuse or harassment, uh, that could be emotional, verbal abuse, physical abuse. You see someone with physical marks that don't look like just normal scrapes or cuts from falling off their bicycle. Um, neglect, sexual abuse, and sexual harassment. Now, there's a difference between sexual abuse and sexual harassment, and we all have to be kind of cognizant on what they are. Sexual harassment basically is unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual behavior, or other verbal behaviors or physical conduct of a sexual nature. This could include explicit jokes. We really have to be mindful of what we say and what we do out there especially when we're dealing with adults, or I'm sorry, with children. Um, ex, you know, Explicit jokes could be very offensive to some people, and so we have to be very mindful of that. Um, Sexual abuse is basically molestation. I mean, it's perpetuated by force, taking advantage of another. So know the differences between the two. Um, some of the signs of abuse or harassment, being detached from everyone. If you see a child who's normally very interactive with the group or with their friends, and suddenly they're just off the side, that should be concern. Children that are not engaged, especially with fun activities, or even interacting with their peers, if they stop doing those things. But it really comes down to understanding and knowing the children we work with, and even the adults we work with. Okay. So some of the characteristics of abuse and harassment: the typical abuser blends into society. Of course, they do not want to be seen. They don't want to be detected. These people cannot be identified by race, economic status, community standing, race, gender, mental capacity. Many abuse incidents are perpetuated by someone known and trusted by the abused. uh, Offenders can be other young people as well. So not just adults. We have to be mindful that other children, other adolescents, other peers of kids could be offenders as well. So recognizing the signs, but knowing that there's just not one catch-all. We can't just say this person looks like an abuser. We'll never say that. But just understanding the behaviors. Victims of sexual abuse are carefully chosen and skillfully manipulated. Um, that's obvious. You have certain, uh, you know, victims that are pointed out and that are victimized or separated from the group. These are the ones that usually fall victim or are victim of some sort of abuse. One thing that's really important here that is that offenders may seek positions that provide proximity to youth. So we need to be very careful on who we vet and be very careful on who we bring in as volunteers. It's very noble for our volunteers to do what they do, but we as an organization have to be very careful on who we pick to represent our clubs. We offenders, like what we mentioned here, will look for opportunities to be alone with children, to look for opportunities to do what they do. It's unfortunate, but we do. It starts with the clubs. It starts with our district being able to vet through our volunteers and make sure that we have people that we truly trust out there. um, Sorry. So the majority of allegations of abuse or harassment go unreported. So a lot of young people tend to minimize or deny abuse, not exaggerate or over-report incidents. Um, they may not tell anyone about an assault because they're convinced that they are to blame or they fear consequences. Some of them, they just don't want to say anything. They just want it to go away, so they'll keep it in. Um, Males, unfortunately, I don't have any scientific uh, statistics to claim here, but males are less likely to report abuse because of self-blame, social stigmas, or fears of not being believed or to be seen as having a particular sexual orientation. That's really important, and it's unfortunate. Uh, and in some cases, youth wait to report abuse until they are adults, and we see that in the media nowadays with things that are happening in some of the religions, things that are happening with the Boy Scouts, and we see it in media where these reports aren't coming out until decades after the fact. So a lot of victims like to keep that in. Um, okay. Oh, sorry. One thing here that I missed is never allow anyone to be alone with a child at any be alone with a child at any time. That's pretty important. It kind of uh, it's more of it's kind of a best practice. You don't want any accusations or anyone to accuse or thinking. It's better to just keep things clean. Never allow anyone to be alone with a child at any time. And this really comes down to, and a good example of this is after an event, if you have just one child waiting for their parent, and you're standing with the child, maybe start walking over and bringing that child along with the group of adults and waiting for their parent to pick them up. Then it's never a good thing to have any allegations or be seen to have. It's just we'll just keep it clean that way. That's a good best practice. Um, so one of the things, this is from John Wooden, the most powerful leadership tool you have is your own personal example. And John Wooden is a basketball coach in the 70s for UCLA. This quote I've always kept in mind as as a leader, because everyone, adults and children, are making observations. You as a leader, if you as a leader bend rules, chances the people around you will view that as acceptable. So what I'm trying to say here is make good decisions based on the good of the people and the good of our clubs. Just always be mindful of that. All right. So our next, we're really moving along here. Leadership and position of responsibilities. Uh, uh, Me being the district youth protection officer, you know, I'm here placed to foster safety operations across all youth programs. I'm your resource on abuse, harassment, and other risk and crisis. As YPO, Youth Protection Officer, my responsibilities are to monitor changes in local and national laws, as well as RI policies. I'm here to communicate those changes to the district level and the clubs and the club chairs. Uh, I'm here to work with you, our clubs, to inform you of all YPO obligations. So obligations such as background checks, affidavits and forms that need to be filled out and sent. Um, I'm here to confirm screening measures are current and compliant. And I keep a database on whose background checks need to be renewed, and who needs to be. And I keep track of that. And ensure proper training, making sure that we have sessions such as this, where we go back and we train everyone on youth protection. I oversee proper handling of allegations. That's a real big thing, and we'll go over that a little bit later. And then I also maintain the records for allegations of abuse, harassment, and other crisis. So anything that comes in, I'll maintain the records on that. So one thing that I wanted to actually mention to you is, any allegations or reports has to go through me or sent to me. I'll put together the facts and disseminate that to our leadership, our district leadership. The worst thing that we can do is have multiple pieces of reporting from multiple sources. My job is to really get all the facts, put them together, and send them very timely to those that need to know. And so that's one of the more important things that I wanted to let you folks know. Or if there was a good key takeaway, is that any reports of allegations, please send that over to me. So the clubs, our club presidents, program chairs, and other club officers have the overall responsibility for operating, coordinating club youth activities, to include integrating our youth protection policies. So we do have a youth services policy book manual. It's really important that all we do in everything that we do, we implement or integrate our protection policies. So our club's executives should know all Rotary District youth protection policies. We should implement required training, screening, program logistics, risk management procedures. When we talk about risk management procedures, we more or less talk about insurance. And I'm not the expert on the insurance part, so I'm not going to go and dig into that. But a good risk assessment involves looking at the proposed activity, and listing inherent risk, and creating plans to lower or mitigate that risk. So in everything that we do, careful planning and ensuring that we've basically dotted the I's, crossed the T's, taken a good look at potential risks. One thing that I wanted to mention, there was an incident that happened. This is not club related, but this happened and it was brought up in the media, where mid-pack, there was an activity, Mid-Pacific Institute, there was an activity where they took the child or the youth over to do some canoeing or kayaking over in Kaava. And it was an unfortunate case where someone, I guess two people lost their lives, one of them being a child. And so, was there a proper risk assessment done? Did the child have proper protective equipment, like a life vest? Was even down to the weather, where it was the conditions looked at prior to going in? Was there, uh, reports or forms created from the parents or to the parents to allow their children to go out there. Certain things like that, those should have been placed in the plans. So we want to make sure that whenever we have an activity concerning youth, that we're constantly looking at those things. Engage regular. So I don't want to be repeating myself here. But the club executives should know all Rotary district policies, implement training, engage regularly with youth program participants to get feedback on programs. The feedback is really important, and report all allegations of abuse, harassment, and other crisis to the youth protection officer, who will disseminate information to proper district leaders. The youth protection procedures, district level policies and procedures that comply with Rotary Code of Policies and the Rotary Statement of Conduct for working with youth. District level policies is under revision right now. The district level policies really coincide with the youth protection guidelines from Rotary International. It really has the foundation of that, but what it really does, it creates a localized guidance for us. So that will be distributed to members at shortly. So volunteer selection and screening. So we want to utilize a youth program volunteer application form. Remember what I mentioned earlier, that we have to properly vet, properly screen our volunteers. There's an application form that we can use, and it's in the Appendix C portion of the Rotary Youth Protection Guide. We can go ahead and tailor that to the clubs, but there's a good template on there. A good interview. You want to interview your volunteers to make sure that, and ask whether or not they're a good fit, find out whether or not they're a good fit for the program that you have. You want to conduct reference checks, criminal background checks, and the criminal background checks that we conduct is basically through IntelliCorp, and that's for everyone. Home visits, and we do this for the youth exchange, host families for the youth exchange. Volunteer training. Volunteer training, that's training specific to the program role, that's done in the club level. If you folks need any help with training, please reach out to me and I can go ahead and help out with that. But it is specific to the program role. So let's say that you have a volunteer that is heading the Interact program. You want to give them specific training towards that. And the training should include abuse, harassment, and crisis prevention information. So our clubs and districts may offer youth opportunities to travel outside of their home to participate in activities such as RILA, youth exchange, etc. While there are many benefits to youth participants, there are inherent risks for all parties. So we want to make sure that at a minimum, we receive written permission from parents or legal guardians. One thing that we spoke about was, or kind of added to this, is online safety. And online safety, and we're in a Zoom meeting right now, but Zoom meetings are very common. We have to be aware that if we have Zoom meetings with youth, that we are aware that storing information or pictures of youth especially on a personal computer. We need to be mindful of those things. Each program should consider potential risks and develop policies to address them, rather not to have a centralized type of computer, or that's really up to the clubs. But each program should consider having their own best practices when it comes to this type of venue. So awareness of threats to participants is necessary to evaluating potential risks and developing a crisis management procedure in advance. So be aware of types of crisis. And when we talk about crisis, we're talking about accidents, we're talking about violence, we're talking about natural disasters. We can even say political instability, outbreak of illness. Those are just to say a few. We want to be able to be prepared or even be aware of the areas that we're in and whether or not those types of crisis are possible. Communication, that's a big deal. Coming up with procedures on communicating and how we're going to communicate and who are we going to communicate that to in the case of a crisis. And coming up with procedures, procedures such as review, if we're taking youth out for a certain activity like tree planting, for example, understanding, having emergency procedures or a disaster response plan, understanding what medical facilities are close by. And in case of youth exchange, maybe understanding or knowing if you need translation services. Also knowing what government resources are available for you when you're deployed or detached from your normal areas. This can be part of any activity such as youth services activities such as RILA, Interact, Rotaract, and Youth Exchange. Allegation response and follow through. This is really an important one because if there is an allegation that goes to any of our leaders in the club level, all allegations must be handled according to local laws and RI policy. So when receiving a report of abuse, we have to make sure that we're compassionate with the person that's making that report. We have to remain neutral and responsibly. We have to listen to them, make sure that we listen attentively, and ask questions to establish facts. Sometimes a lot of emotion comes into play. We want to make sure that the information that we collect are factual information. And we want to get all sides of the parties that are involved. One major thing here is that if there is an allegation, we want to separate the person making the allegation with the accused. So follow up. So we want to document the allegation as soon as possible. We want to ensure the parent of the involved youth are contacted and the actions are being taken care of. We want to take immediate action to ensure that the participant health and well-being. So if they need medical, if they are abused and need medical attention, that we provide them the medical attention right away. Our focus here is to take care of the participant, making sure that they're taken care of. So properly reporting allegation of abuse and harassment to law enforcement for investigation. We have to make that decision. If that abuse is such in a way where we need to get law enforcement involved, make that decision and get law enforcement there. We want to make sure that we follow district policy on notifying the youth protection officer. So giving myself a call, and I'll give you my cell phone number after we're done here. And that way I can get, any information that I receive, I'll put together and send up to district leadership. So until the issue is resolved, remove all youth program participants from contact with any person accused of sexual abuse or harassment. We have to make sure that we remain mindful and compassionate to the person that is accusing. But we want to make sure that sometimes the programs really do have to continue. We have to just remove all parties involved. So the district is to report all allegations to Rotary International headquarters within 72 hours of learning of the incident. And one thing that I want to mention, whenever something like this happens, a lot of people like to talk and find out what's happening, and maybe not for malicious reasons, but just because they want to know. I mean, we want to avoid gossip and blame. We want to keep all information confidential and released only to those authorized. We do not want to go and give information out to our peers and say, hey, look, this is what happened here. This is crazy. We want to keep all of that. We need to be mindful and especially when we're talking about our youth, we want to keep everything confidential until we get things out. Anything with the media, we have a communications person that goes out and will speak to the media. So there's no need for any of us to do that. But waiting for guidance from the district is what we'll recommend.
Hey, Peter, can I interject something real quick here?
Absolutely, Benson.
There's been a couple of questions about the actual youth protection guide document that is sent out by Rotary International. And so what I'm going to do is, if you make sure your name and club is listed in the chat, I will send that guide off to everybody. So at least you have a PDF version of it. Some people have said that they don't have one or haven't looked at it. But it is a substantial document that will take a little time to go through, but I think everybody in every club should have a copy of that, but I will send that out.
Thanks, Benson. I apologize, everyone. I don't see your chats. I have a full screen of my slide deck here, so I appreciate you bringing that up. I thought that not everyone had it. I do have a link and the PDF version of it, so if you don't mind doing that, I could do that myself also, Benson, so I appreciate that. Yeah,
so a couple of people have already posted some stuff on the chat, so go ahead, Mark. Thanks for your statement, and then Karen Wilson also put the document in the chat. So yeah, that makes it so much easier. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah, please let me know and stop me if there's anything that's compelling enough for me to answer, because for some reason I don't see my chat box here.
Yeah, well, that's okay. Peter, I'm monitoring the chat, so if anything comes in, I'll what I told everybody is just put their question in, and then we can address them when you're done with your presentation.
Perfect. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, so we're gonna go to some key takeaways here. Sorry, I'm trying to get myself organized here a little bit. Or even before here. Even before that, what I wanted to mention was that our policy forms under the Rotary 5000 site, and this kind of goes along with what Benson mentioned with the Rotary International youth protection guidance, but you'll find in the Rotary 5000 site under policies and forms all the resources you need that'll help you, such as reporting guidelines for abuse and harassment, guidelines for youth exchange emergencies, etc. You'll also see the youth program volunteer affidavit form, which that's what we're going to use to kick off the background check processes. So those are things that resources out there for you in that Rotary 5000 site. So just wanted to make sure that I make mention of that as well. So best practices and key takeaways. We're here to provide an environment for our youth to grow and become productive adults. We want to recognize and address abuse and harassment. Like we said earlier, never be alone with a child. We want to be aware of local policies such as policies for the DOE. The DOE might have certain guidelines that they have. We want to take a look and be mindful of those. Encourage volunteering, but scrutinize those volunteers. We want to go through the correct vetting process when we bring people in. We want to be the example. Okay, we're all leaders out here. We don't want to be out there with offensive behavior on Rotary functions or use offensive or explicit language. We want to make sure that we're, it's a lot of the events we have is very casual, but we want to make sure that we're not being offensive. Crisis management. We have a crisis management program that we're putting together with the a crisis management program that we're putting together that we'll disseminate to everyone. But having that together with your policies in place and knowing what those are will help. Conduct a risk analysis for every activity. And what we mentioned was taking a look at, if we are going to do something out there, to really understand what inherent risks we have. If we are let's say feeding the hungry, bringing the youth from location A to location B, are there any risks involved? And then we want to ask ourselves, we really want to be mindful of things like, is hugging or giving a kiss appropriate? We live in a culture where, it's part of our culture, but, is that appropriate? And we have to ask ourselves that and really have that in our conscience when we're doing things, because, it's unfortunate, but we are in a society that really needs to be vigilant of these things. And so maybe a good handshake or a good, good knuckles may be a better choice. And I don't see this. Oh, sorry. But on the bottom, I had placed the link for that website. You can cut and paste that. These slides will be available to you, but that has all the information for District 5000 on the policies and forms, and gives it's a good resource for all of us. So some of the pictures over here, we got Ryla over here, and I just want to kind of shout out here, Kapolei Sunset. They did a nice a polio cupcake fundraiser. And so we do a lot of great things out here. We're a very busy organization. Okay, so to continue with the takeaways, youth programs, basic screening. And this is, for no significant or unsupervised contact, youth programs, volunteer affidavit, and a criminal background check, which is valid for 2 years. So anyone that is in your organizations or in your clubs that will at some point be involved in some sort of youth activity, it's better to do it now, get these background checks out of the way and vetment out of the way, so you guys can really do some good work out there. Intermediate screening, unsupervised contacts. These are usually for the chairs, people that have unsupervised contact with the youth. Youth programs, volunteer affidavit form as well, and the criminal background check, and an interview. We really want to talk with the chairs to understand and have them clear on some of our policies and procedures, what's accepted and what's not accepted. So we've got, this is a Ryla event in Maui. So Youth Exchange. Youth Exchange is another excellent program that we have that's part of our Rotary. It's definitely part of what we do. Youth volunteers or host families have to have an affidavit. Criminal background checks valid for 1 year, reference checks, interviews, and even home visits. And the home visits can be done with short notice or long notice. It's just so that we can understand the household or the situation that our students are in, that are coming in, living in. Club certification. Complete a club compliance statement, and that statement basically is a checklist that gives the clubs a basically what it's a checklist that vets the clubs, making sure that they are compliant in all they do with the youth exchange. We also want to make sure that part of that club certification is that the club has implemented an abuse and harassment prevention training program within that. So kind of some of the items that we have to do for youth exchange. Do we have any questions, anyone? I can open it up for questions. That's basically
Peter,
what it is.
Peter, I've got some questions that came through the chat. Okay, I think the first one from a couple of questions from Patty Mitchell. Patty wanted to know, do we renew our background checks each year? How does she know if and when we need to renew it? Is there any way to find out who is current in their club? And that's from Patty at Rotary of Waikiki.
Patty, thanks for the question. That's really important. So background checks normally are good for 2 years. What we'd have a background check administrator who's Natasha Claren. She has a list of who is out there. We want to keep the clubs. We want to just keep it with the stakeholders. You folks should know already or have some sort of database on who background checks are needed to be renewed. We can definitely help you with that. Just let me know if you need any help. Some clubs that I've seen had background checks with members that aren't even there anymore. So it's a challenge, I think, enterprise wide, but we want to make sure that we start now and get that going. So 2 years, every 2 years, it needs to be renewed. But great question.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Our next question comes from Lorraine Davis over at Hilo Bay in Hilo. And she said she's interested in conducting a risk management on activities. Are there any common guidelines that she can access?
Yeah, well, there are some guidelines out there. We don't have anything here in our policy book regarding risk management. If you take a look at risk management in the Rotary, in the eyes of Rotary, it really speaks about insurance. It talks about insurance. Myself being a risk management professional, I have a list or guideline that I want to push out to everyone when they conduct these for the activities, and it's a basic who, what, when, where, why. You take a look at inherent risks. You take a look at, and it's basically the group coming together and drilling down to possible root causes until there really isn't any root cause to drill down to. So I have a template. I'll be able to send that out to the group, and it's a very basic checklist. It might need to be modified a little bit for the specific activity that you do, but that's what I'm here for. So if you have a specific activity that you want to run through me, we can go ahead and come up with a more tailored risk assessment model.
Great. Okay, Peter, our next question comes from Lynn Goya, and she's asking, who needs to get a background check in our club?
So anyone that deals with children, or has activities dealing with their youth, up to the club president. So club presidents, the chairs, basically the executives within the club, the board, all need background checks. You have an Interact chair, they need to get a background check. Let's say that you have a person that volunteers at functions every month. They would need a background check. So it says in our policy book that every volunteer, every Rotarian member that deals with children has to take a background check, has to have a background check.
Okay, great. Thank you. So our next question comes from Joe Park from Maui. He says some of our members have been vetted, certified to work with children through other organizations, i.e. one is a principal and certified by a Diocese of Honolulu, and another is a DOE teacher and certified by the state. Do they also need Rotary training, or will the district accept these alternate systems?
We go through our, I'm trying to understand the question a little bit, but we go through IntelliCorp for background checks. When you're talking about vetting volunteers through other organizations, we want to make sure that they are consistent with our Rotary policies as well. It might be that their policies are more stringent than ours, and that's okay. But what we want to do is we want to take a look at in having more of a standardized process. Now, I did talk with Naomi on whether or not clubs are able to seek out other venues for vetting and background checks. It's never been brought up before. So it's something that we need to explore a little bit, I would think. But for the sake of uniformity, for the sake of knowing that we've vetted our processes through a background check, a company that does this background check for us for numerous years. We want to stay uniform on that. Our vetting process is internal. We shouldn't have outside organizations do vetting for us. We're a Rotary club. We're our own club. So we want to introduce people volunteering for us and go through a process internally. So I would recommend, I know we go through case by case scenarios all the time, but I would recommend as much as possible routing some of those concerns over to me, and we'll take a look at it on a case to case basis. But as far as vetting people, going through an interview process, we still need to be involved at some capacity. You could have a church do a vetting process and say that their volunteer is good, but we still maybe need an extra layer and bringing our own type of vetting in there. That way we get ourselves involved.
Okay, Peter, appreciate that. Joe, I wanted to reach out to you to see if that was the answer to your question, or if you wanted to expand on that a little bit more. Did you get that, Joe? Let's see. Yeah, we can't hear you. I'm sorry. Okay. All right. No problem. Okay, Peter, the next question comes from Wes Munn, and he wanted to say, do you have any ideas as to keeping our youth safe from recipients of our projects or the general public? The risk assessments must address that. Risk assessments must address that.
Absolutely. And that's part of a risk assessment. You take a look at the activity that you're going to go ahead and get involved in, and you have to take a look at all aspects. We did a project over in Waikiki, and it had to do with runaway children, and we brought our youth in there. We were in an area kind of surrounded by vagrants and homeless, and not to say that anything bad would happen. We needed to make sure that we addressed all risk. One of the biggest takeaways that I have is being observant and ensuring that we're keeping an eye on all our participants at all times, and having a process together. Doing a safety brief prior to going into the activity has always been helpful for us. Letting the children know that if there is a problem, or if they've experienced something, to let your team leaders know right away. even down to signal calling. Sometimes we would have these air horns, and somebody would go ahead and blast an air horn at an emergency. So there's a lot of different methods. I'm not going to tell the clubs what to do as far as notification in that part, but these are things that we just need to be aware of, and it's part of our risk analyses. Is that when we go into an area, we need to be mindful of the surrounding areas. We have to know that if we're volunteering at a space, is this volunteer space exclusive to Rotary? Can we be able to block it off from any outside people? And so those are the things that, or some of the question or statements that we need to establish prior to going in. And this is part of the collaboration between club leadership and the activity that we're going and servicing. But it's just awareness and really we've all had kids. We all have to go and keep an eye on them. And it's the same thing here. If we are leading a group of children or youth and we have volunteers, those volunteers have to have the responsibility and commitment that they're going to keep an eye on what's happening and aware. And it just really falls back on the club at that point. Hope that answers that. Benson, I think you're muted.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, my wife uses that a lot. All right. So Hugh had a question about who does the background checks, and how are the background check results protected, and how long must they be kept, and who keeps them? I guess you're the one that keeps them, huh?
Yeah, so I keep the background check information. Our background check administrator, Natasha, she's the one that gets all the nuts and bolts together with that. But what we want is on the District 5000 website under, forms and procedures, I believe. I have the link somewhere. There's a volunteer affidavit. So that volunteer would have to fill out that affidavit and send it or upload it over to Natasha. Now, that information stays confidential. We do not want to send that information out as a reply all. There are certain things on that affidavit that speaks personal information. Now, we're not talking about social security numbers or date of births, but we're talking names, addresses, phone numbers, and then a simple checklist. Am I a Rotarian, not a Rotarian? What are you going to be working with? Interact, Rotaract, so on and so forth. And then it goes on to a criminal history. Have you ever been convicted or pled guilty to any crime? Yes or no? And then it goes through those types of questions, like 3 or 4 questions on that. And then it has a little waiver, consent, and release where the applicant would have to sign. That gets uploaded. Background check fee, there's a little, it's between $13 and $19. It's about $15 depending on how far the company has to go. But once you upload these forms to Natasha, what happens is you're going to get an invite from myself or my email address. The user will click on that secured link and then upload their personal information on that link. Now that link is secured. That link is between the user and the company at that point. And at that point, the company or the user would have to upload their payment as well. It takes a little bit to get the results back, anywhere from 1 to 3 days, or maybe 2-3 weeks, depending on where you came from. If you came from the East Coast and you're here in Hawaii 6 months later, it might take a little bit time for that background check process to vet. But that basically is the process in a nutshell. It is secure, and I'm the one that keeps all those documents.
Hey, Peter, I wanted to ask you if you could share screen again and put your contact and Natasha's contact. I took it down. We'll put it back up because people are asking for that contact information. So if you have the ability to do that again, that will be wonderful.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, I know I said I was the expert at Zoom, but
Yeah, no problem. Well, you can kind of work on it while we kind of go through the questions. Yeah, there we go. Thank you.
and
Yeah,
there we go.
yeah, that's the one everybody's looking for. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and that's my cell number. It's on all the time. Anything that you folks need, I am here for you. Background check submittal, send the affidavit to Natasha Claren. She's the one that processes it through.
Yeah,
But if you have any concerns with security or concerns with
yeah.
confidentiality, please reach out to me, and then we can take that.
Okay, Peter, I wanted to wedge my own question in because I had a
Sure.
So if there's an incident out there, there's some type of incident, an accident or whatever. I mean, after we dial 911, if somebody's been injured or whatever, what is our next call? Do we call you? Do we call the district governor? Do we call our club president? As far as Rotary, what's our first call after we make sure everybody's safe?
Okay, excellent question, Benson. Thank you for bringing that up too. I know I touched upon a little bit of that earlier, but we can delve into that a little bit more. Any type of incident, send it to me, and it's that wasn't my decision to make. That was something coming from our RI policies and procedures. That came from Naomi. She wanted to make sure that I expressed that to the group, that she does not want to get a call from a lot of people at one time with different types of messages, different scenarios. We want to go through, find out the who's, the what's, the when's, the where's. I'll put that in a nice package and disseminate that right away to Naomi. So we've had incidents in the past where, allegations would be put out. People feel that they need to let the district governor know just by default, which it's not a bad thing. It's just that there's got to be a process to it. Unfortunately, during that incident, there was maybe 10 or 15 different claims that came out, different people that gave out different scenarios of what happened. And so just to eliminate confusion, what we've decided here is to follow our RI procedures and vet or send all of those calls over to me. That's my phone number there on the screen, the 389-7459. 24 hours. I work for the government, so I'm on call 24 hours. So there's no excuse for me not to be on call 24 hours for you folks. YPO at RotaryD5000.org. That's my email address that comes to me, but give me a call. So that's really the process that goes through. Yeah.
Great. So Peter, so as far as the affidavit that people need, so it's contacting you or Natasha to get that affidavit. Is that correct?
Well, the affidavit is over in the Rotary District
Okay.
5000 site. So you folks
Great.
can go ahead and download that electronically. I can go ahead and send you the link if that makes it easier, but it's rotary5000.org, and it's a youth services volunteer affidavit. Let me know if you folks need that. I can go ahead and send that link out to everyone, but it's a pretty good document. In that District 5000 site, you also find a lot of other information on there regarding procedures and what to do in the case of. And like I said, those guidelines have been vetted through legal and vetted through RI, so we're good to go.
Okay. So those of you that are asking about, where do we get the affidavit, all of that, Peter just answered that question. So there's been a question about background checks. So if there's any concern or any issue with a particular member regarding a background check, is that answered by you? So the results of the background checks comes to you. So if there's any concern with any member, if something comes back that's concerning, then how do you handle that? Do you contact the person that requested the background check, the club president? How is that handled?
Yeah, well, we'll go back and the results of the background check should come back to the user that placed that. It will go back to the club. That information will go back to club leaders. But I'll go ahead as soon as I hear anything, or if anything does come back, positive or negative, the clubs will know. So once somebody's been vetted through the background check process and everything checks out and they're good to go, I'll let the clubs know that you're okay. That person's okay. Same if it doesn't go through.
So is there any way for the, I mean, outside of just calling you and asking you about a specific person, so there's no way that club officials can access background check information? Is that correct?
It's an admin function with IntelliCorp, and it's to protect the user or protect the person submitting the information. We want to be mindful of that. We do not want negative information going out to anyone. And all we should be concerned with really is whether or not they either pass or don't pass. And if there is something that needs to be contested along the way, we can go ahead and get across that when we need to. Again, case by case scenario. I've never had a bad background check come through to us so far, and I'm knocking on wood. But aside from just the background check really looks at criminal activity, whether or not you've gone through basically criminal activity, and that's really what it looks at. It doesn't look at how many parking tickets you had or anything like that, but it is a good comprehensive check to make sure that the people that we work with, they're not abusers, they haven't been through the systems and not convicted felons or anything like that. I understand and I sympathize with those that are trying to do good for themselves, but we want to make sure that we all have the right people in the right capacity. So
Great, thank you, Peter. So our next question comes from Gail and Hilo, and she just wanted to know what risks have increased with virtual interactions and events like RILA.
So really what it is the number one risk that I see or that we've come across, and when I talk with our friends over at Honolulu Police Department, is the fact that we have information that can be stored in our computer systems. When we're doing a virtual anything, we can go ahead and record. We want to make sure that, and with that recording, we're talking images of the kids or the youth that we work with. Might not be malicious, but it's a risk nonetheless. We want to make sure that when we do hold these Zoom conferences or RILA conferences, that we're just not doing it on our own. We're just letting other people know. If we're having, let's say, a Interact Zoom conference that comes up on a Saturday, I'd like to get a call. It's not part of a process yet, but when we do a risk analysis, I mean, it should be something that we're mindful of, because we want to ensure that when we have children's images secured in our computer, it's for the right reasons and it's for business use, not for personal use or whatever.
Okay, great question. Thank you.
Yeah, that's an awesome question.
I just want to let you guys know that if you want to get a copy of the actual youth protection policy, the affidavit, all of that is listed on the district website, so you can go ahead and get that. A question comes from Wally Wong wanting to know if the district can pay for the cost of background checks.
Yeah, we kind of bounced that back and forth a little bit. As of right now, the clubs are responsible for that. Whether or not the district has to pay for it, uh, I I can't answer that right now. To be honest with you, I'd love to pay for everything to and have everyone happy, but right now. As it stands, the clubs are responsible for the background checks. I'll get with Naomi and talk about that. It's been light conversation going back and forth just on who really is responsible in paying. Clubs have always been responsible in paying for those background checks. It's their people they're vetting, and so that's one of the things. But I totally understand, Wally, where you're coming from on that, and it's something that we can continue to discuss.
Okay, great. Good question. Um, somebody posted and I just have their phone here, I guess, about the stat breakdown between adult and child adolescent abusers. And so not sure if that's something that you have or can answer.
Statistical breakdown.
Yes, the question is a curious question. So whoever asked this question, it just comes from Galaxy S8. If you want to unmute and ask further, explain it. They just said, curious question, what's the stat breakdown between adult and child adolescent abusers?
Yeah, it's funny that you even bring that up because it's something that I wanted to take a look at. And even if it was worth bringing up here, localized information I don't have. There are national statistics that talk about that, but there's so many different variables that go into it. We do a lot with our youth. We don't have the problems that a lot of people are like in, let's say, the continental US or even national or internationally have. But we do have our concerns. We've done a great job as an organization in perpetuating our reputation, and part of that is because we're doing the right things. I mean, we're very ethical in everything that we do, making sure that we're not alone with children. Doing those steps that lower our risk. So if I was to make a best guess, I would say that our statistics are very low anyway, and maybe not even worth discussing or having any discussion on because they're so low. But it is apparent, and we're not immune to it. I mean, in my years with Nalani doing youth protection a few years back, we've had instances where some things occurred. So we're not immune from it. The best thing I can say is that know that it's out there. The potential of it is out there, and understanding and knowing as a club as clubs that we need to make good sound decisions when it comes down to reducing, mitigating, and then reacting to these incidences and risks.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Follow-up question is that.
Excuse me.
Okay. Go ahead.
Excuse me, that question came from me. I'm really not Galaxy S8. But I just haven't
Yeah.
filled in my name yet. Kurt Sharp from Hilo Bay.
Oh, okay.
Now, the reason I pose that question very quickly is the adolescent should be a concern, because if they continue to get away with that adolescent actually continues with that as an adult. So that's the real danger there.
Absolutely, Kurt, and you bring up a good point that when we mentioned earlier in our slide deck, a lot of these adolescents or kids, they don't talk about it. They don't. Chances are they may not report a lot of these incidences from happening. So what happens is they keep it in them. for decades, and we've seen it like, I think we mentioned the Boy Scouts, and even some of the religious organizations where things happen decades after, and these go reported decades after. So it does have an impact. But what we can do as an organization here is to really observe the youth that we're dealing with. If you have, a child that is normally very happy and running around and engaged, and then you see them suddenly on another activity, very detached, quiet, there might be some issues. And I'm not saying that we should be social workers here, but we should be attentive to the youth that we're servicing. And so whether or not it's an observation that you let their like, let's say we're doing an interact and we see a child that's a little distant, maybe letting their teachers or counselors know. And it's about the communication and collaboration that we have between us and our activities.
Thank you.
Peter, Kurt actually asked, I'm assuming that this is you, and I want to apologize to everybody that's on this call. Typically, what happens when we have a Zoom meeting, I enable the thing that allows everybody to change their name, because people log in and it just says iPhone or whatever. But there was some concern about people asking questions anonymously without identifying who they are. So Kurt, apologize for that.
No problem. No problem.
Kurt asked a follow-up question, which was, how do we decide when to involve law enforcement? So whose call was that?
So the
Your
leaders,
call?
the leaders within the club, it's not my call, because what we want to do is we want to make sure that if an allegation of abuse or harassment is made, that proper authorities are called right away. We don't want to delay it at all. I should be the second person that they call after that.
Okay.
When there's an allegation of sexual abuse, that is when you call the police department. If there's some situations where kids are just kind of picking at each other, that would not probably be something that you would call the police in. But what I wanted to mention is that we have to use good judgment when it comes to this. If somebody is let's say that there's a fight that breaks out and you separate everyone, then you come together and figure out, is this something that you need to call the police in, or is it just like a fight that we can take care of and let the parents know, and then put in an incident report and then and move on. I would have to say sexual assault, sexual harassment, absolutely. Those are definitely where you pick up the phone and you separate the alleged with the victim, and you call the police at that point.
Can I interject?
Hi, Patty.
Go ahead, Patty.
I have to tell you some advice that was given to me by a police officer. I've worked in education all my life, and the recommendation is you make the call. You go with your gut. They are the professionals. They will decide, and they'll get to the bottom of it. But I want to encourage people not to hold back. If you really feel that something, maybe you don't have all the information, you don't need to have all the information. I'm quite passionate about it. And it could be something maybe we haven't even been aware of or seen ourselves. So we don't really have, all those markers or understanding of it, but go with your gut. I mean, it's just, the risk is not worth it. Let the professionals move forward with it.
Absolutely, Patty. And I'm glad you brought that up or interjected there. It really comes down to the clubs making the decisions. You folks make the decisions at that point, whether or not the police, but yeah, no, go with your gut. If you feel that it's necessary to call the police, or, then go ahead. It is not, you won't be at fault for something like that. But what I want to say is that we make the decisions all the time. If there's an allegation of abuse, or if there's something that goes on that's very strong. I mean, I don't want people or clubs to let's call Peter first, or let's call, you know, whoever. Let's get the police involved. But you're right, Patty. Thanks for bringing that up. If it's in your gut to call the police, absolutely call the
And
police.
I want to add to that, because you look over and over again, whether it's the Boy Scouts or whether it's Fresno Unified School District, or if it's a daycare facility, you know, people want to keep it in-house. You know, sometimes it never gets outside of house. And so that's why, you know, more than not, number one, call the police, then I'm going to be calling you and calling the president. But, you know, I don't, you know, I'm a wife of a law enforcement officer, and, you know, it's just being in that community, and my son's a firefighter in Los Angeles. That's the recommendation. So,
Yeah.
So you don't call the parents first.
I'm
You
sorry.
don't call the parents first.
No, I'm calling
Yep.
911, and
Yeah,
then I'll contact the parents, because I mean, who knows, the parents themselves may not know.
Okay, all right.
It's not our call.
Again, everyone, it's back to the stakeholder, it's back to the clubs, it's back to the activities. Yes, absolutely. Call the police if you feel that you need to. Definitely let club leadership know, let myself know, so I can go ahead and send that information up. But if it's your first method of communication is to call the police, then I would say call the police, and I understand. But it's back to the club level. You know, if something does come up, absolutely call the police. Parents actually need to know as well. But we want to make sure that we're mindful and sensitive to the victims. And so the club, it really goes back to the clubs and the decisions that they make.
Okay,
Well, this is
Yeah.
this is a critical, in my opinion, this is a critical part of the policy. This one activity right here sets everything into motion. Yeah. So we got to be really, really careful with it.
I think
Agreed.
what Kurt was asking in the chat, Peter, is if we could have a kind of a checklist, like a little hot sheet. So if something happens, then we know what to do.
Yeah.
And then we're all sort of doing it uniformly. And so maybe that's something that that needs to be kind of decided at the upper level, so that everybody has this little red card with the big stop on it. It says in case of fire, or
Right on.
dial whatever,
Yep.
have that kind of checklist. So, hey gang, we're coming down to the last kind of 10 minutes. So we still have a bunch of questions I wanna pose over to Peter. So Peter, can you just clarify real quickly, what is the actual cost of a background check?
I have a range. It's
Okay.
13. Yeah, I don't know if that answers anyone's question, but I do have a range. It's $13.60 to $19. So $19 would be where the company would have to do numerous layers, I suppose, of, if you lived in multiple areas, and they would have to contact multiple counties and get information there. So I do have a range. It's between $13.60 and $19.
Okay, it's kind of like the
I usually tell everyone it's about $15.
Okay. All right. So in your budgeting, folks, you can use that. So another question came from Patricia, and she just wanted to know that when our club has youth participation, what is the ratio of youth adult chaperones based on our protection guidelines?
Protection guidelines don't even state that. I don't have anything that states a specific ratio. A good best practice is 4-to-1. That's a best practice. It will be up to the clubs in their risk analysis. Now, again, it goes back to club leadership and making right decisions, whether or not you would want 20 kids to one person. That doesn't make sense. But a good best practice to have is usually 4-to-1.
Great. So next question comes from Ali Ackerman. Ali, maybe you can expand on this a little bit, but it says, if a minor's parents are present and a Rotarian is at an event with the children, do they still need a background check?
No, because that's more of a one-time deal. If that parent is going to, let's say, um, volunteer for more than one event throughout the year, it does state in the policy manual that all volunteers who participate in your Rotary youth programs submit a completed affidavit and youth background check. So if they're known or they're going to volunteer, I would say for more than one event, absolutely.
Okay. Lorraine asked another question. She said, can I, that as folks working with youth, that we are mandated reporters?
I'm sorry, Benson, you broke up there. Say that again.
Lorraine from Hilo Bay asked, can I assume that as folks working with youth, we are mandated reporters?
Mandated reporters.
That we have a mandate to report any, like a kid shows up and they got like two black eyes, or something like where we see something that looks suspicious, are we mandated to report that? Was that your question, Lorraine, or did you want to expand on that?
Yeah, I assume that's like teachers or other types of professionals who have a legally binding obligation to report any issues that they see. The question is, do we also have that obligation?
That's true. I'm a mandated reporter by where I work and the fact that we work with youth. So I am a mandated reporter, and I'm just wondering if that extends down to when we work with youth as well. And I'm thinking especially with RILA.
Yeah, with RILA, absolutely. I would say that we have the responsibility to ethical responsibility to report what we see to the organizers of the activity. So if, let's say, you're dealing with an interact group, letting their host teacher know of your observations, that would suffice. Anything from RILA, you definitely will end up becoming a mandated reporter at that point, because we're responsible for the children. I mean, they're at a basic leadership camp, so at that point, anything that you observe would have to be reported. But it really comes back down to being responsible in knowing that you should report something when you see it.
But as a mandated reporter, my decision tree is very specific.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm doing, if I did risk assessment, if I am a mandated reporter, I don't get the option of who do I report to. I already been told who I have to report to if I see this or if I see this. It isn't reporting up to a higher level in my administration. Actually, for me, it's as a mandated reporter, most of the time I either have to go to CWS or I have to go to the police. I don't get an option in the matter. At least.
Okay,
That's
so gang, Brian, thank you, Brian. Just put a whole thing in the chat about who is a mandated, what a mandated reporter does. So thank you for that, Brian. So if you guys are interested in looking at that, it's listed in the chat right now. Okay, so we probably got, yeah, thanks, Brian, for putting that link in. Man,
Thank you.
Great resource people. So we got probably time for a last question. Otherwise, it's just about 11:30 and time for wind up. I got to tell you, every Saturday I'm on these things all day long. And this has been one of the most engaging ones I've ever been on, simply because of the subject matter and the willingness of people to engage. And of course, Peter's great presentation. So I really want to thank everybody for joining today. I'm going to leave Peter's contact information. Please follow up if you have any more additional questions. As you may probably discern the presentation, this is a super important piece of what we do as Rotarians out there. So it's awesome to see how seriously everybody took it today. So if there isn't any more things that you guys would like to say, you can put it in the chat. I'm saving the chat. This particular presentation will be, it was recorded and we'll upload, have it uploaded on the district website probably by tomorrow if you would like to watch it again, or maybe run it through your club. I know several of you have asked about doing risk assessments within your clubs. I'm sure that there's something that between Peter and I and Nalani and Naomi could put something together so that at the club level, you can put that out to all of your people, because that's what this is for, is to make sure that all of this information we presented today filters down into the club level. So really, really important that you guys join us today. So I want to thank you very much today, and everybody, celebrate Saturday.
Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate you all.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Awesome presentation.
Thank you.